They say the worst pain is not when someone breaks your heart. It's when they shatter the version of yourself that trusted them. But sometimes it's in the ruins of betrayal that you finally find the quiet power to rebuild. Not to erase the past, but to understand it, and to outgrow it. I still remember the ice in my veins that day. You know that feeling when you're so angry you actually go still, eerily calm. That's exactly how I felt as I walked into Ventano, my ex-husband Carter's favorite restaurant, the same place he had taken her on their first date while we were still married. And now, here they were again, celebrating the finalization of our divorce and their new beginning with a baby on the way. God, even thinking about it now makes my hands shake a little. Sorry, I should back up. I'm Madison. 3 years ago, I was Madison Blake, married to Carter Blake, the regional sales director for a pharmaceutical company. We'd been married for 7 years. Not perfect, what marriage is, but we had our routines, our inside jokes, our plans for the future. Or so I thought. The first sign something was off was when Carter started working late. Like, really once a week, always Thursdays, he'd come home smelling like he'd just showered at the gym. Which wouldn't have been strange, except he claimed he'd been working out to relieve stress after long strategy meetings. The new cologne should have been my first clue. Who wears cologne to the gym at 8 p.m.? Business is really picking up, he'd say, kissing my forehead absently. New product launch, you know how it goes. And I believed him. That's what kills me the most. Looking back, I actually believed him. It was Kendra from my book club who saw them first. She didn't want to tell me. Nobody wants to be that messenger. But she'd seen them at a wine bar across town, looking very cozy. Her hand was on his thigh, his fingers playing with her hair. You know the scene. I'm so sorry, Madison, Kendra had whispered, clutching my hand across my kitchen island. I thought you should know. I remember nodding mechanically, like one of those bobblehead toys, just up and down, while everything inside me shattered. When I confronted Carter that night, he denied it at first, of course. Classic. But once I mentioned Kendra had seen them, he switched tactics, minimizing. It's nothing serious, Madison. Just a work thing. You and I have been so distant lately. Distant? I was working 60-hour weeks trying to make partner at my law firm, and he knew that was temporary. We'd talked about it. He said he supported me. Eventually, after 3 hours of circular arguments, half-truths, and watching the man I loved become a stranger before my eyes, he admitted it. Her name is Bianca, he said. She's our new marketing director. Of course she was. Bianca West, 15 years younger than him. A former college volleyball player with that effortless beauty that makes other women feel instantly lesser. I'd met her once, at a company picnic months before. She'd been friendly, asked about my career, complimented my earrings, all while apparently planning how to slide into my marriage. It just happened, Madison. I didn't plan it. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of choices, hundreds of tiny moments where you could turn back, but you don't. That night, I slept in our guest room, staring at the ceiling, remembering our wedding vows, how sincere he had sounded, how I had believed that when Carter promised me forever, he meant it. I thought that was rock bottom. I was wrong. 6 weeks later, just as I was trying to decide whether to attempt marriage counseling or call a divorce attorney, Carter came home with a look on his face I'll never forget. Equal parts panic and excitement. We need to talk, he said, setting his keys on the counter carefully, like they might explode. I remember every detail of that moment, the fading sunlight streaming through our kitchen windows, the smell of pasta I'd been cooking, his favorite, ironically, because I thought maybe a nice dinner might help us have a real conversation, and the distant sound of the neighbor's kids laughing outside. Bianca's pregnant. 2 words that shattered whatever was left of us. I couldn't speak. It was as if the floor beneath me cracked open silently, not with a bang, but with a deep, still ache. Everything I believed we were, every struggle, every compromise, every whispered hope, collapsed under those 2 words. It's mine, he added, as if I might have clung to the hope it wasn't. I didn't cry. Not then. I just felt this strange hollowness, like someone had scooped everything out of me and left an echo chamber behind. The silence between us stretched, not peaceful, not angry, just vacant. A void where a marriage used to be. Hi, Farallon. My voice didn't even sound like mine. Almost 3 months. The timeline told me everything. This hadn't been a recent slip-up. It had been going on for months before I ever suspected a thing. While I was working late to build our future, they were creating one. Without me. He moved out that weekend. Said he needed to do the right thing. By Bianca and the baby. As if abandoning your wife was ever the right thing. The divorce proceedings were swift but brutal. Carter wanted it over quickly. No surprise there, with a baby on the way. I watched him transform from the man who once held me through my father's funeral to someone who argued, through his lawyer, over who should keep our wedding china. He didn't even want it. He just didn't want to be the one seen as giving everything up. But here's the thing about being a lawyer yourself. You know how to prepare. And sometimes you notice things others miss. The first red flag appeared during a settlement meeting. Bianca came along, already showing in a tight dress that seemed custom-made to twist the knife. But it wasn't her presence that caught my attention. It was the way she kept checking her phone, stepping out to take calls. Something felt off. She's just nervous about the baby, Carter explained. But the look in his eyes told me he wasn't entirely convinced either. The second red flag came when I overheard her speaking to someone in the hallway outside our mediator's office. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but her voice carried. "Don't worry about him," she was saying. "He has no idea. Just keep it together for a few more months." At the time, I thought she was talking about Carter and the stress of the divorce. Later, I'd realize it was something else entirely. The third flag was the most unsettling. At a required court appearance, I noticed something strange. Bianca was actively avoiding Daniel, Carter's best friend since college. Daniel had shown up to support Carter, which wasn't unusual. They'd been inseparable since freshman year at Northwestern. But what was unusual was how Bianca physically turned away when Daniel approached. How she suddenly needed to use the restroom the moment he joined our awkward pre-hearing cluster in the hallway. I'd always liked Daniel. He was that rare kind of friend who stuck around through all of life's transitions, college to career, bachelor to married man. He'd been Carter's best man at our wedding, gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. He was there at our home for holidays, birthdays, Super Bowl parties, a constant presence, reliable and genuine. So Bianca's obvious discomfort around him struck me as deeply strange. Daniel seemed different too, subdued, almost unable to look Carter in the eye. I filed these observations away, not yet understanding their significance. 3 days after that court appearance, my doorbell rang at 9:30 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not since Carter had left. My social circle had shrunk dramatically. Funny how many couple friends suddenly become busy when you're newly single. I peered through the peephole and saw Daniel standing on my porch, shoulders hunched, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets. He looked terrible, unshaven, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. "Daniel?" I opened the door, genuinely confused. We'd been friendly over the years, but he'd never visited me alone. "Is everything okay?" He looked up, and I was startled to see his eyes were red-rimmed. "No," he said simply. "Nothing's okay. Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I stepped aside, leading him to the kitchen where I'd been sorting through bills. The house felt too big now, too empty, but I'd refused to be the one to move out. This was my home too, damn it. "Do you want something to drink?" I asked automatically. "Coffee? Wine? Something stronger?" "Whatever you're having," he mumbled, sinking into a chair at my kitchen island. I poured us both a glass of the Cabernet I'd opened earlier. Daniel took his with a shaking hand and immediately drank half of it in one go. "I've been trying to do the right thing," he began, staring into his glass. "Trying to figure out what that even means anymore. But I can't sleep, I can't eat, I can't look at myself in the mirror." I waited, sensing that whatever he needed to say wasn't going to come easily. "It's about Bianca," he finally said, "and the baby." My stomach clenched. What about them? Daniel set his glass down and covered his face with his hands. When he looked up again, there were tears in his eyes. "The baby might be mine." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and unreal. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "What are you saying?" He took a deep, shuddering breath. "Bianca and we were together, before she and Carter. At least, I thought it was before. Now, I'm not so sure about the timeline." You and Bianca? I couldn't keep the shock from my voice. Daniel had always seemed so steady, so loyal. It started at the company Christmas party last year, he said. Carter left early. He had that flight to Denver the next morning, remember? I nodded numbly. Bianca and I ended up talking at the bar. One thing led to another. I'm not proud of it. It was supposed to be a one-time thing, but it wasn't. I guessed as much. Daniel shook his head miserably. We kept meeting up for about 2 months. Then suddenly she ghosted me. No explanation. Next thing I know, Carter's telling me they're seeing each other. I was stunned, he continued, but what could I say? Hey man, I was sleeping with her first, so I said nothing. I see, I said softly. I thought it was over between us, he said, defensive now. I figured she'd chosen him over me. It hurt, but Carter's my best friend. I wanted him to be happy. Until you found out she was pregnant. I concluded, I said quietly. Daniel nodded, finishing his wine in one long swallow. The timing, he admitted, it could be either of us. And lately, she's been texting me again. He added after a pause. Calling late at night, saying things like how she made a mistake, choosing Carter, how we should talk about options. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages before handing it to me. I read through the texts from Bianca, my shock deepening with each one. This should have been our news to share, not mine and his. We need to talk about what happens after the baby comes. I made a mistake. Carter doesn't need to know everything. And we could work something out. The baby's starting to kick. Don't you want to feel it? Each line felt like a needle, sharpened not just with betrayal, but intention. There was nothing vague about it, no accidental blur. This was calculated, rehearsed, and somehow that made it worse. I handed the phone back, feeling sick to my stomach. Have you told Carter? How can I? Daniel looked anguished. It would destroy him. He's so excited about being a father. He's reading baby books, painting the nursery. He bought a minivan for God's sake. But if the baby isn't his, that's why I'm here, Daniel interrupted. I don't know what to do, but I can't keep living like this, and I thought you deserved to know after everything Carter put you through. I sat down across from him, trying to process it all. Do you have any proof, besides these texts? Daniel hesitated, then nodded slowly. I have pictures from when we were together, and there's a hotel receipt. We stayed at the Westin downtown one weekend when Carter was at that sales conference in San Diego. The dates, they match up with when the baby would have been conceived, based on what Carter told me about the due date. My mind was racing, puzzle pieces snapping into place. It was dizzying, the way everything began to align too perfectly. Lies folding over lies. It was no longer a matter of suspicion, it was a matter of proof, of what came next. And there's more, isn't there? I asked slowly. Daniel looked surprised. What do you mean? You wouldn't be here just because of old hotel receipts and a few sketchy texts. Something else happened recently. He stared at me for a long moment, then reached back for his phone. She sent me this 2 days ago. He pulled up a video message and pressed play. Bianca's face filled the screen. Her expression was soft, intimate, secretive. Hey, you, she cooed. I miss seeing you. We need to figure this out before things get too complicated. She paused, then added, the doctor says it's a boy, by the way. He looks just like you in the ultrasound. I swear, he has your nose. She laughed softly. Carter doesn't suspect a thing. He's so caught up in the whole daddy fantasy, he hasn't even questioned why I won't let him come to the appointments anymore. We need to talk, for real. Call me. I had to look away. My stomach turned. There she was, so poised, so practiced in her softness, speaking with tenderness while orchestrating ruin. I felt a cold rage building inside me as the video ended. Not just for myself, but for Carter too. Whatever he'd done to me, he didn't deserve this. No one did. I wish I'd never met her, Daniel whispered. She's destroying everything. I looked at him thoughtfully. Does she know you have all this? The texts, the video, the receipts? No, he said, shaking his head. I've just been collecting it, trying to figure out what to do. A plan began forming in my mind, not for revenge, at least not entirely. For truth, for clarity, for consequences. I heard through the grapevine that they're having a celebration dinner, I said carefully. At Ventano's, once the divorce is final, to celebrate their new beginning. Daniel winced. Yeah, Friday night. Carter invited me, but I told him I couldn't make it, couldn't stomach it. I reached across the table and took his hand. What if we both went? I asked softly. What if we brought all of this with us? He pulled his hand back, eyes wide. You want to confront them? In public? I want the truth to come out, I corrected. In a way that can't be denied, minimized, or explained away later. Don't you think Carter deserves that much? Daniel was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded slowly. Yeah, he does. But this will destroy our friendship. Your friendship was destroyed the moment Bianca came between you, I said gently. This is just acknowledging the wreckage. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. Daniel sent me everything. Dozens of texts, emails, photos, videos, all pointing to one inescapable conclusion. Bianca had been involved with both men simultaneously, and the baby she was carrying was almost certainly Daniel's. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Bianca's own sister, Lena. I'd only met Lena a couple of times at company functions, but she'd always struck me as different from Bianca, more grounded, less flashy. When I reached out to her and explained what we'd discovered, she wasn't surprised. Bianca's done this before, Lena told me over coffee, her voice barely above a whisper. In college with her economics professor. Then again with her boss at her first job. She targets men with potential, men who can give her the lifestyle she thinks she deserves. And the baby? I asked, though I already knew the answer. She's been telling me it's Daniel's, Lena confirmed, looking down at her hands. Carter has better long-term prospects, but she's keeping Daniel on the hook as insurance. She looked up at me, regret in her eyes. I should have said something sooner. She's my sister. But this has gone too far. Lena gave me her own evidence, screenshots of conversations where Bianca had explicitly laid out her plan to secure her future with whichever man proved most advantageous. There was even a photo, an ultrasound Bianca had sent to Lena with the caption, "Baby looks just like Daniel. Thank God. Carter's nose would be a tragedy to pass on." The night before the dinner, Daniel called me, clearly on the verge of backing out. "Maybe we should just talk to Carter privately," he suggested, his voice strained. "This whole public confrontation, it feels cruel." I understood his hesitation. "It does feel harsh," I acknowledged. "But think about it from Carter's perspective. If we tell him in private, Bianca will have time to spin it, to manipulate him further. You've seen how she operates." "Yeah," he admitted reluctantly. "And honestly, part of me wants witnesses. Not for revenge, but for accountability. I spent months being the subject of whispers and pity, while Carter paraded around with his pregnant girlfriend. Some truths, I said, deserve to be acknowledged publicly." After a long silence, Daniel sighed. "You're right, I'll meet you there." That night, though, the certainty I had felt began to shift. I sat alone at my kitchen table, staring at the envelope of evidence like it might catch fire in my hands. A voice inside me kept whispering, "What if this makes you look petty? What if this isn't strength but spite?" I had always promised myself I wouldn't become the kind of woman who needed spectacle to be heard. And yet, here I was, planning one. Was I standing up for what was right, or trying to reclaim something that had already been lost too long ago? I didn't have a clear answer. Only the heavy weight of knowing that doing nothing would haunt me more. That night, I barely slept. I kept questioning and re-questioning my decision. Was I doing this for justice? Or for vengeance? Was there even a difference at this point? By morning, I had settled into a strange calm. Whatever my mixed motives were, the truth deserved to be heard. I chose my outfit carefully, not to compete with Bianca, but to armor myself. A simple navy blue dress I'd worn to argue major cases in court. My power dress, professional, confident, unassailable. I arrived at Ventano's 10 minutes before the agreed time, clutching a manila envelope that held everything we'd collected. Daniel was already waiting outside, looking like he might be sick. "I don't know if I can do this," he admitted when I approached. I squeezed his arm. "You can, we can. It's the right thing. Even if it's the hard thing." The hostess recognized me. Of course she did. Carter and I had been regulars here for years. "Mrs. Blake," she said, then caught herself. "I mean, Miss Hale." Back to my maiden name. "Are you meeting someone?" "The Blake party," I said calmly. Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh, I'm not sure if—" "It's fine," I assured her. "We expected this." A necessary lie. She led us toward the private dining room in the back. Her discomfort was evident in the stiffness of her posture. Each step toward that room felt heavier than the last. like I was walking into a courtroom with no judge, just a jury of people who knew too little and assumed too much. My pulse was steady, but my stomach curled tight, bracing for the blow of eyes, of silence, of truth laid bare. I could hear the laughter and conversation before we reached the door. Happy sounds, celebration sounds. When we walked in, the conversations didn't stop immediately. It took a moment, like watching a wave recede from the shore. The silence spread gradually from where we stood until the entire room fell quiet. Carter saw us and froze, champagne glass halfway to his lips. Bianca, standing beside him and clutching his arm possessively, visibly paled. "Madison?" Carter managed, his voice strained. Then his eyes shifted to Daniel, confusion replacing shock. "Daniel? I thought you couldn't make it." "Change of plans," Daniel said, his voice surprisingly steady. I smiled, not angrily, not sadly, just a small, composed smile. "We thought we should deliver our wedding gift in person." Confusion crossed Carter's face. Several guests shifted uncomfortably. "The divorce was finalized yesterday," he said carefully. "There's no need for whatever this is." "Oh, I know," I said, stepping further into the room. "That's why the timing seemed perfect. You're celebrating new beginnings, right? Well, I thought you deserved to begin with the truth." Bianca's hand tightened on Carter's arm. "I think you should leave," she said, her voice brittle. "This is a private party." I could see the slight swell of her belly beneath the red dress. 5 months along now. A child Carter believed was his. A future he had destroyed our marriage to pursue. "We'll leave soon enough," I promised, opening the folder I'd brought. "But first, I think Carter deserves to know exactly what he's celebrating." Carter looked between Daniel and me, wariness creeping into his expression. "What's going on?" Daniel stepped forward. "I need to tell you something, man. Something I should have told you months ago." "Daniel, don't," Bianca hissed. But he continued as if she hadn't spoken. "Bianca and I were together before you two started dating." Daniel said, his voice low but clear in the silent room. "At least, that's what I thought. Now I'm not so sure about the timeline." Carter's face hardened. "What are you talking about?" "We were seeing each other for months." Daniel continued. "It started at the Christmas party, when you left early for that Denver trip." Carter's eyes darted to Bianca, who was now shaking her head frantically. "He's lying," she insisted. "We barely knew each other." "I wish I was lying," Daniel said sadly. He pulled out his phone. "But I have proof. Texts, photos, receipts from hotels we stayed at, including the weekend you were in San Diego. The same weekend that, according to the due date, the baby was conceived." The room erupted in whispers. Several guests looked away, embarrassed to be witnessing something so personal unravel in public. "Show me," Carter demanded, his voice flat. Daniel handed him the phone. It was open to a gallery of evidence. I watched as Carter scrolled, his expression shifting from disbelief to shock to devastation. "This doesn't prove anything about the baby," Bianca said quickly, desperation creeping into her voice. "So what if Daniel and I had a thing? It was over before you and I got serious." "Then explain this," I said quietly, pulling the ultrasound photo from my folder. The one Bianca had sent to her sister with that damning caption. Carter took it from my hand, fingers trembling. He read the caption once, then again. When he looked up at Bianca, there was such raw pain in his eyes, I almost regretted our decision. "Is this true?" he asked, voice barely audible. "Is the baby Daniel's?" The silence that followed was deafening. Someone in the back of the room mumbled an excuse and slipped out. Then another. Soon a steady stream of guests was quietly making their way toward the exit, uncomfortable witnesses to the collapse of a carefully curated lie. To her credit, Bianca didn't crumble right away. She tried denial first. "They're making this up," she insisted, reaching for Carter's hand. He pulled away like her touch burned him. "They're bitter," she added quickly. "They're just trying to ruin our happiness." But her performance was losing power fast, as Daniel quietly continued, laying out the rest of the evidence. The video message where Bianca said the baby had his nose, the texts about options after the birth, the hotel receipts that perfectly matched the conception timeline. "Ask her," Daniel said softly, "why she won't let you come to the doctor appointments anymore." Carter's face, already pale, went ashen. "Is that true?" he asked Bianca. Her strategy shifted instantly. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under," she cried, tears appearing right on cue. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. You knew exactly what you were doing, I corrected calmly, placing Lena's printed statement on the table. Your own sister confirmed your plan, how you were keeping Daniel as backup while securing Carter's financial stability. You talked to Lena? Bianca gasped, genuine shock replacing her rehearsed grief. She would never. She did, I confirmed. She said, and I quote, "This has gone too far." Carter collapsed into his chair, pressing his palms against his eyes. When he looked up, there were tears streaming down his face. Not cinematic, graceful tears, but ugly, broken sobs that shook his shoulders and made his breath come in ragged gasps. "I left my wife for you," he choked out, looking at Bianca. "I threw away my marriage for this? For a lie?" Bianca's expression hardened. The mask slipped completely, revealing the calculating woman beneath. "Oh, please," she snapped. "You were looking for an exit from your boring marriage long before I came along. I just gave you an excuse." Her words hit me like a physical blow, but I held my composure. This wasn't about me anymore. This was about truth having its moment, however painful. "When were you going to tell me?" Carter demanded, looking between Bianca and Daniel. "After the baby was born? Were you ever going to tell me?" Daniel looked genuinely remorseful. "I've been struggling with this for weeks, man. I didn't know what to do. You were so excited about being a dad. So you were just going to let me raise your child?" Carter's voice rose, anger breaking through his grief. "Let me believe this lie forever?" "I didn't know for sure," Daniel said weakly. "Not until recently." "Recently?" Carter echoed. "How recently?" Daniel glanced at me, then back at Carter. "The ultrasound. When she sent me that picture, saying the baby looked like me. That's when I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore." Bianca scoffed, grabbing her purse. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen to this." She turned to Carter. "Are you coming or what?" The remaining guests watched in uncomfortable silence as Carter stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "No," he said finally. "I'm not coming. Not now. Not ever again." Bianca's confidence wavered. This clearly wasn't how she expected the confrontation to play out. "Fine," she snapped. "Your loss. There are plenty of other men who'd be thrilled to be with me." "Like Daniel?" Carter asked bitterly. Daniel flinched visibly at that. "Maybe," she shot back. "At least he knows how to have fun. You were already turning into a boring, predictable husband, just like you were with her." She jerked her head toward me with that parting shot, then stormed out, leaving a stunned silence behind. I should have felt vindicated. I should have felt that sharp, electric satisfaction of a plan executed perfectly. This was the moment I had planned for, Bianca exposed, Carter forced to face the consequences of his choices. But as I watched him sitting there, his posture collapsed, his hands shaking faintly as he wiped at tears he couldn't control, I felt none of it. No triumph, no relief, just a deep, aching sadness. Because I knew what it felt like to love someone who didn't deserve it, to believe so fully in a shared life only to find you were the only one carrying it. "I should go," I said quietly, gathering the documents. Carter caught my wrist. "Wait," he said, his voice raw from crying. The last of the guests took that as their cue to leave, offering mumbled goodbyes until only Carter, Daniel, and I remained in the private dining room. "How long have you known?" Carter asked once we were alone. "About a week," I admitted. Daniel came to me. He wasn't sure what to do. "We decided you deserved the truth." Carter nodded slowly, processing. Then he turned to Daniel. "A lifetime of friendship hanging in the balance. You slept with her knowing I was interested in her?" Carter asked, voice flat. Daniel shook his head. "It started before I knew you were seeing her, I swear. And when you told me about you two, I backed off immediately." "But you didn't tell me," Carter said. Daniel's voice was quiet. "How could I? You were already falling for her. You seemed happy, happier than I'd seen you in a long time." Carter let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "Yeah, because I thought she was carrying my child." "I thought I was starting this amazing new chapter," Carter said, running his hands through his hair. "God, I'm such an idiot." "You're not an idiot," I said gently. "You were deceived. We all were." "I threw away everything good in my life for a lie," he whispered, reaching for my hand across the table. "I'm so sorry, Madison. So incredibly sorry." I let him hold my hand for a moment, feeling the familiar warmth of his skin against mine. Once, that touch had meant safety. Home. Now, it felt like touching a photograph, a two-dimensional reminder of something that used to be real. I was wrong, he continued, his eyes pleading. So terribly wrong. But maybe this is a sign. A chance to start over, to try again. And there it was. The moment I had both anticipated and dreaded. The part of me that had fantasized about this exact scenario for months should have been rejoicing, but instead, all I felt was a quiet certainty that this chapter of my life was truly finished. Daniel cleared his throat awkwardly. I should give you two some privacy, he mumbled, turning to leave. No. Carter stopped him. We're not done yet, Daniel. You and I don't know what we are anymore. Daniel nodded sadly. I understand. I betrayed your trust. Even if it was before you two were official. I should have told you everything once I knew you were serious about her. Yes, you should have, Carter agreed, the anger in his voice mingling with grief. But that wouldn't have changed what she did. That's on her, not you. The three of us sat in silence for a long moment, the wreckage of our intertwined lives laid out before us like debris after a storm. Finally, Daniel spoke. What happens now, with the baby, I mean? Carter looked down at his hands. I guess that's between you and Bianca. I'm out of the picture. I'll do the right thing, Daniel promised. Whatever that is. Yeah, Carter nodded distantly. You always do. Eventually. The words weren't quite forgiveness, but they weren't total rejection either, just an acknowledgement of a complicated truth. Carter, I said gently, withdrawing my hand from his. What happened tonight doesn't change the past year. It doesn't erase your choices. I know that, he insisted, but people make mistakes. Terrible, stupid mistakes. We had 7 good years together. That has to count for something. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find the man I had married in the tear-streaked face before me. He was still handsome, still had those same eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. But something essential was missing. The trust. The certainty that this person would always choose me, especially when it was difficult. It does count for something, I said. It counts for a lot, actually. Those years shaped both of us. But they're behind us now. It doesn't have to be, he said quickly, a desperate edge creeping into his voice. We could try again. Counseling, a fresh start. I know I don't deserve it, but... It's not about deserving, I interrupted gently. It's about what's right for both of us going forward. I hesitated, then decided he deserved the whole truth. I've been seeing someone, I said. Carter's face fell. Who? Logan Reeves. Recognition dawned immediately. Logan, your college boyfriend? Logan and I had dated back in college, before I ever met Carter. We'd reconnected at a conference 6 months after Carter moved out. Both of us were single, both a little wiser from what life had thrown at us. The one you said was the road not taken? Carter's tone sharpened. I winced. I had shared that phrase during a late-night conversation early in our marriage, never expecting it to be used against me years later. Yes, I acknowledged. We bumped into each other at the Hastings conference. In Boston, we're taking things slow, but it's good, Carter. I'm happy. The revelation seemed to hit him harder than even Bianca's betrayal. The possibility of reconciliation, his emotional safety net after Bianca's deception, disintegrated before his eyes. So that's it, he said bitterly. You get your revenge, and I get nothing. The accusation stung, but I refused to be baited. This wasn't about revenge, I said calmly. It was about truth. You deserve to know what kind of person she really is before you built a life with her. I stood, smoothing my dress. What you do with that truth is up to you. Daniel had remained silent throughout the exchange, clearly uncomfortable witnessing such a personal moment. Now, he stood too. I should go, he said quietly. Carter, when you're ready to talk, if you're ever ready, I'll be there. Carter didn't acknowledge him directly. He just gave a small nod, still staring at the table. I gathered my purse and the folder, leaving the evidence behind. Carter would need it, for whatever came next. Does he make you happy? Carter asked as I turned to leave, his voice small. Happier than I did? I paused at the door, considering the question. It's different, I said finally. I'm different. This past year, it's changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I loved you, he said. Even during everything. I know that sounds impossible, but it's true. I believe you, I said, surprised to find that I truly did. But love isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes, trust matters more. As I walked out of Ventano's that night, I felt something I hadn't expected. Peace. Not triumph, not vindication, not even relief. Just a quiet certainty that I had finally closed a door that needed closing. That was 8 months ago. The aftermath unfolded in ways none of us could have predicted. Bianca moved back to her hometown in Oregon, apparently to be near her family as her due date approached. Daniel followed, determined to be present for his child's birth and to take responsibility as a father. They're not together romantically, too much damage had been done, but they're trying to build a healthy co-parenting relationship for their son's sake. The baby was born 2 months after that night at Ventano's. Liam, 8 pounds, 4 ounces, with Daniel's eyes and chin, unmistakably his father's son. Carter transferred to the company's Seattle office, a fresh start, far from the whispers and pitying glances. We exchange occasional texts, birthdays, major holidays, but nothing substantial. I've heard from mutual friends that he's in therapy now, trying to understand the choices that led him to where he is. I hope he finds the answers he's looking for. As for me, Logan and I are still together. We bought a house in the suburbs 3 months ago. Nothing fancy, but it has a garden and enough space for his daughter from his previous marriage when she visits on weekends. We're talking about getting married next spring, just a small ceremony. Family and close friends. Sometimes, I think about how differently things might have turned out if Daniel had never found the courage to tell the truth, or if I'd chosen to keep Bianca's deception a secret. Would ignorance have been kinder? Would a private truth have been enough? But then I remember the look on Carter's face when he realized he'd been manipulated, not just by Bianca, but by his own willingness to believe what was convenient instead of what was true. That moment of clarity, however painful, was necessary. For him, for me, for all of us caught in Bianca's web of deception. The hardest lesson I've learned through all of this is that sometimes the people we love the most are capable of causing us the greatest pain. But the second hardest lesson is just as important. Surviving that pain doesn't make you bitter, it makes you wiser. I don't regret walking into Ventano's that night. I don't regret exposing the truth, even publicly. Some revelations need witnesses to prevent them from being rewritten later. What I do regret occasionally are the 7 years I spent with someone who could walk away so easily. But then I remind myself, those years weren't wasted. They were preparing me for where I am now, for who I am now. And honestly, I like this version of me so much better. She's stronger, clearer about what she wants, less willing to compromise on the things that truly matter. Dear friend, maybe you've been there too, standing at the edge of something broken, holding a truth too heavy to carry and too dangerous to ignore. We often think closure comes from answers or from someone else's apology. But the truth is, closure begins the moment you decide that your worth doesn't depend on someone else's ability to value it. Like the Stoics said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Real strength lies in how you respond, not in what you endure. So if you've been hurt, lied to, left behind, know this. You are not powerless. You are not broken. You are rebuilding. And that is your quiet victory. Your story doesn't end where someone else abandoned you. It begins where you choose to reclaim it. If this story touched you, please consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who might need it, and subscribing to our channel for more heartfelt stories like this one. Your presence here means more than you know. Thank you for listening.